Hey everyone, and welcome to a wild episode of the WoW News. I say wild because a lot's going on. In fact, our old lead systems designer, Ghostcrawler, he's now leading Riot Games' MMO project. And that might be the one serious bit of competition that could happen. An interesting situation, we'll get onto that soon. But then, Blizzard have nerfed Torghast quite significantly. As a response to player feedback, Ian Hazzikostas has, of course, been interviewed, and there's a whole bunch more now that Shadowlands is actually out. What's also out is this month's Patreon goodies. We've got the Death Knight pin, we've got the art, we've got the sticker, and over there's also the content. I'm partway through writing out our big, org rebuild BTS series, which be a real good one for the productivity nuts like myself. We've got early content up there, on the way to be up there, and also the daily briefing going on there too. So, quite a bit. But okay, Shadowlands has wrecked my sleep schedule, so take that as a positive review, and that means if I don't record this soon, I'll keel over. So let's go. Blizzard really wanted to deal with the Torghast player response, because not only did they do hotfixes and changes, but they actually got Ian Hazzikostas an interview with Polygon, right? Like a general non-WoW outlet. And that really does show you that the Blizzard PR team are trying to reach past the more dedicated WoW-specific audience and actually get the info out there broadly. Which honestly was kind of strange to me, but there you go, that's what they did. Now, Ian essentially said that beta testing did not prep them for live players. It seemed like that was specifically around how live players would just go for the Soul Ash no matter what in the high layers, even if they weren't geared. And that basically because of that, Blizz feel they didn't really communicate what a layer actually was difficulty-wise, and a whole bunch of other problems. Overall, he says that he wants runs to be shorter and to have a higher success rate, and that in the long term, they want to work on making powers more diverse and fun, and finally, they want players' difficulty expectations to basically be a bit better communicated by the game. Now, you might be wondering, what does this actually mean for me? Well, it's actually led to a lot of changes where, difficulty has been nerfed across the board, but especially at the higher layers. Then mobs, they have less health, they deal less damage, and that is particularly so in 4 and 5 player groups. Blizz have then also nerfed down some specific enemy and boss abilities, and they've made it so that unnatural power no longer prevents, I believe, stuns and stuff when it's above 10 stacks. Then also some of the torments have been nerfed. Quite a lot of nerfs. There have been anima buffs though, some good changes. Now, there was a wave of earlier hotfixes where they basically just made a bunch of things more powerful but less stackable, which I think overall was a good change. But in this latest wave of changes, they've made it so there's a higher chance of your starter power actually being stronger, higher quality, so that's pretty hype. Then anima cells from rares will have at least 3 options, and they've increased the drop rate of anima cells from mobs in general. That's all pretty cool. And it's kind of interesting here. I mean, the tuning from beta to live actually was a bit jarring for our team. We, as you know, did a lot of Torghast work in beta, and yeah, it hit live and we kind of thought, that's harder than we thought it would be. Now that said, we've still found high success rates into the higher layers as a group, but that's obviously not happening for all players, classes and specs. Overall, I would say Torghast has a few issues. I think Torghast should be really, hard. I do think that when it scales up, it should be really hard, but there's a difference. I don't think it should be a big slog. I more think it should, or at least with the current design and reward system, it shouldn't be that. With how it realistically is now, I think it should be really hard, but also short. And it should be more about, just kind of iteration, bang, 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 going through a bunch of them. In the same way you'd maybe be playing Isaac or something like that. And that, for me, essentially means that I think more damage should come from avoidable sources, less from unavoidable sources, and I think mobs should actually still be quite fast to kill. I think that would be a lot more close to how roguelites tend to feel as a genre. Then anima powers. They need a bunch of work. I mean, man, I'm an MM hunter, right? And I just get so much junk. I know, boo-hoo MM hunter, you might be laughing at that, but not really boo-hoo, but I mean, you get a rare or epic quality thing and it makes soul shape, your Covenant signature ability, be a bit faster and have less of a cooldown. You see that and you're like, man, okay, neat, but that doesn't help me scale as I go to the next floor. So you end up going for 30% more aim shot damage or something. Or I think it's 50% now, but overall here, I think Blizzard need to double down on throughput impacting powers right? They really need to focus on that. And then they need to work out just what is actually interesting there. Because, yeah, 30% aim shot damage is not particularly thrilling. So I don't know, man. Is there some way that like my bursting shot could become something I could like build a character around? I don't know, but it would be cool if things like that could happen. Overall then, I think that short but intense runs are the way to go from here, and we'll just need to see how Blizzard actually balances this. I think it's pretty damn clear that in the future, there'll be a lot of patchwork on Torghast. I'd also say that I think Soul Ash is nice, but we need more rewards. You know, some anima wouldn't go amiss, considering it is content that you're doing, and I think they could do more with cosmetics, yes, even beyond the Twisting Corridors cosmetics that do already exist, and maybe some permanent upgrades that are, like, got from doing Torghast, not just the Maw. Maybe that would be good, but hey, who knows what the future holds, and that's why I'm going to ask you, what do you think they should do with Torghast in the future? Well, Ian was a busy boy because he also had an interview with Sloot, and I'm just going to do a TLDR here. Overall, Ian seemed quite happy. He called out how it's pretty nice not to have a Legion Legendary or Azerite-like fire to put out at the start of the expansion. And yes, I totally agree. Sure, we had our server problems, but I think as an overall video game experience, Shadowlands is doing super well. I mean, look at my guild, we're all pretty damn happy. Now, issues do exist on a smaller scale, and this interview did actually touch on a few of them. One of them is one that's got me killed a lot, and that is sub-rogues in PvP. Ouch. And Ian said that the team is aware and that fixes are coming. Basically, they really like the more fast, lethal PvP balancing, but, you know, things like sub-rogue are just a bit silly and ridiculous. And I gotta say I agree. Right? I think if those balance outliers are fixed, then this current iteration of PvP is something that I love, because super long slogs where healers are extremely super powerful, to me, that just ain't fun. If dampening is the answer, then we're just not in a good place in my view. Okay, tanks were also touched on, with the core point being that Blizzard actually do want there to be a little bit of threat gameplay, and they want to move away from the tank damage meta. Fair enough, but, I mean, our prop paladin sure can dish out a lot of DPS while still competing with healers on the healing, and, yeah, being a tank. Okay, so for rewards, Ian also covered those, and there's a few interesting tidbits. First up, he said that the team is actually happy with the Great Vault and just like gearing in general for Shadowlands. And I totally agree. I think gearing is such a big victory here. I'm targeting BIS. I'm actually thinking about stats because I know that Titan Forging isn't just going to mess it up with item level. You know, I just think there's a clarity that comes from there being no Titan Forging that has just made me so much more engaged with gear. And man, I think the Vault is fantastic. It might not always be perfect, but it is so much better than what it replaces. And I've already found myself engaging with the Great Vault, well, in an interesting way. Like, I'm looking at what the Vault can give me, and I'm actually formulating what I want to do with my character. To me, that's satisfying. Now, Mythic Plus. Ian actually said that, yeah, it can feel a bit lacking in the vanity rewards. And yeah, that's something that Ian agrees with, especially in a world where, you know, if you're doing PvP, like, you're getting your elite PvP sets. So, the team knows that Mythic Plus could be cosmetically and stuff like that more rewarding. Really good. I would love to see what just a V2 of Mythic Plus progression looks like, but it's good it's on their radar. Tier sets, another thing we've all really wanted. That came up, and Ian actually said that they are definitely, yes, coming in a patch, right? He said they're coming. Don't expect them to be the same, though, because he said that they are starting with the old system as a basis, and they're kind of working forward from there. I think that makes sense, you know, do whatever makes sense for the current game as it is, and that their goals are nailing, like, the collection and cosmetic gameplay, and also, of course, giving people class-based transmog. Sounds cool to me. I mean, if they're doubling down on, you know, the sort of cosmetic progression of that, then yeah, that's going to lead to a lot of gameplay for many people. I will certainly say that I have found the move to armor type based set designs to be very dull. So yeah, I'm excited. Master Loot. I'm less excited about that because he did reconfirm it ain't coming back. We're stuck with personal for the whole Axe pack. Now, I've talked about this so much that don't worry, I'm not going to go on another one of my big rants. I do think it should be there as an option for guild groups. Blizzard clearly disagrees. I think for the people who are very much complaining about Master Loot, you just, you know, we should just give people the choice, and then you could just not play in Master Loot groups if you don't want to. Now, Ian did cite the building of loot tables and the negative experiences the players can experience with Master Looter as, reasons why they don't want it. I mean, who is playing with these boogeyman scumbag guilds? You could not be having a fun time in the game if you're playing in one of those guilds. So that's weird to me. I just couldn't imagine playing in a guild where I don't, trust the team to come to a good, decision for everybody. I mean, look, I play in a guild with people that I trust, and that actually means that the current setup for us, it just means we waste loot, right? Like, there's loot that could be, maybe a better item level for me, but actually better stats for one of my friends, and I will want to give them my piece of gear, because, in my opinion, it's a team effort, and we're actually there to, clear the raid together. And I think all this just means is that what we now have to end up focusing on is getting the high item level, having high item level in our slots so we can then trade loot. And I mean, by the way, all we want to do is Heroic Curve. We're not interested in Mythic at all, right? So all I'll say is, Ian, could you cut us a deal for now? Maybe lower the item level requirement for something to be tradable, or do something like that. Because you and I both know that stat weights are a thing that you kind of have to pay attention to. But okay, before I go off on one, let's end this segment. A few other small things were covered, and look, it's basically just, it's not stuff we don't already know. So let's move on to top tips. Something I've really liked working into these WoW news updates is tips, and I'm going to give you some tips. Okay, the Great Vault. It's pretty damn amazing on how it lets you choose your slots, and you can work around this. You can basically ensure that you don't get messed up and that, you kind of optimize things a bit. Because look, you don't want to get a bit of gear from the vault and then go and do the world boss and replace the bit of gear you just got from the vault. So what I would say is do the world boss before you use the Great Vault. This week, it also would have been ideal to have done the dungeon weekly before opening the vault as well, because doing your weekly dungeon quest for, the special dungeon event, that gives you a bit of heroic Nathria loot. You can then also min-max things. This is what I think there's a chance I could have done. Well, it is what I did, actually, because as soon as I couldn't get weapons from the bosses that we had on farm, I just went and spent my stuff in the vault. But what you can do is you can min-max by holding off on looting the vault until you have re-cleared your raid bosses that your team has got on farm. Now, for me, what I did, and this could be useful to you, is I actually picked the unranked conquest weapon. Yeah, we didn't bother getting past 1400, which is a bit stupid, but anyway, I got that weapon because it meant that then the conquest that I had already earned in my character, which will be 1100 by the end of this week, if I get the weapon from the Great Vault, then I can use that conquest on getting a near Bis trinket, and I can then just push up my rating via doing 2v2 with a Rat Paladin to, upgrade that stuff with honor. And I'll tell you what, that does bring me on to how I really like how we can weave PvP banter with our friends into our character progression. Because I've always enjoyed that. Doing some BGs with the boys, great, love it. But the old system, giving you random loot boxes, made that nearly impossible as a way to progress my character. And now I can, so it's unlocked gameplay for me. Great. Another tip then is engineering. I went engineering so that I could use the new wormhole generator. And if you're not aware here, it's a 15-minute cooldown, and it will take you to a predefined spot in a Shadowlands zone of your choosing. It's legit a second Hearthstone, and I'm sure it can backfire, but it hasn't really backfired for me yet. And, since I've got it, I've basically not had to take a flight point between Oribos and a zone. So, highly recommended, and with the way the economy is collapsed, it only cost me 5 or 6k, I'd say, overall to get engineering up, so totally do that. Okay. With the week's tips dispensed, it's now time to talk about Riot Games' MMO. This is seriously interesting, and I'll tell you fundamentally why it's interesting to me. If you look at the other big MMO that people talk about, it's Final Fantasy XIV. And there's a thing there where FF14 is a pretty damn different game to World of Warcraft, right? And there's a lot of people who are just not interested in a more Eastern style MMO, right? They want their more sort of classic, traditional Western stuff. Now, League of Legends came from Defense of the Ancients, a Warcraft 3 thing. And you can totally see some art style DNA there. Now, I think overall what this means is that Riot, I'd say, are the one company who could make a gameplay-oriented Western MMO that could actually stand toe-to-toe with Blizzard and World of Warcraft. Now, yes, Elder Scrolls Online also does exist, But ESO, I think, just doesn't have that like tight gameplay style that I think you would get from a Blizzard or a Riot. So that's why at a very fundamental level, this is actually extremely interesting to me. Now, this project's actual announcement is really weird because it's not a big press release. No! Ghostcrawler tweeted about it. Yes, Ghostcrawler tweeted that there's a big new project, PS, we're hiring, and then in the comments just replied, it's an MMO. So yes, Riot Games are making an MMO. I think that's pretty damn interesting. Now, Ghostcrawler, if you've been playing World of Warcraft for a long time, or maybe Age of Empires, you'll know who he is. If you haven't, well, Ghostcrawler was the lead systems designer for World of Warcraft. Now, lead systems designer, that's a role that eventually Ian Hazzikostas had, and then of course Ian went on to be game director. Now, at that time, I'd say Ghostcrawler was one of the most visible devs. Certainly, he was the most willing to engage with players, and that's what really got him just a lot of respect in the player base. Sure, it did mean that he threw himself into, the odd firefight every now and then, but yeah, he was a pretty well-liked guy. He left after patch 5.4 Siege of Orgrimmar of World of Warcraft. He joined Riot Games. I believe he was a lead designer in League of Legends. He then kind of just moved up and up and up, and now here he is, a big World of Warcraft veteran, seemingly leading Riot Games' big new MMORPG. Well, I suppose the RPG bit we're not sure about, but we do know it is an MMO. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons why this is interesting to me. I already covered how, Final Fantasy, it's great, but the gameplay doesn't mesh with everybody, and there's a bunch of people who, don't like the weeb stuff, and hey, can't change that, it's just not their taste. So they're still, sort of moated into World of Warcraft. So there's I think an opportunity here for Riot to actually get in. Now, who are they going to be competing against? Blizzard, right? They're going to be competing against Blizzard. I cannot see Riot making a game that's competing with ESO in terms of, its overall vibe, or Final Fantasy in terms of being, basically an MMO version of like a JRPG. Because, yeah, Final Fantasy XIV essentially does have one of the best JRPG storylines, done, and it's an MMO, which is pretty neat. Now, if we think about these two companies competitively, I think that's where it's interesting. This is something I tweeted earlier, but I think that Riot Games are willing to outspend Blizzard on talent. We have heard all the stories. Blizzard underpay for the area that they're in, and they generally do try to rely a bit on that Blizzard passion, on Blizzard's big cultural impact that they've had. But that's something that is shattered, right? Because the job layoffs that were at a record year. And then, of course, the drama with Blizzard employees sharing their compensation, and it becoming very apparent that yes, while the very senior people can do very well, generally speaking, Blizzard underpay for the area that they're in. We then have Blizzard being, I would say, rather stagnant, right? And there has been quite a lot of brain drain. I mean, Mike Morhaime left pretty much right when his non-compete went. He founded Dreamhaven. 2 studios appeared from that. Basically, the old top talent of Hearthstone went and formed their own studio. We've got Frost Giant Studios coming in, which is basically a bunch of, big StarCraft 2 people leaving to do something else. Right? There is a Blizzard brain drain. And as much as this might not be a nice thing for people who say love World of Warcraft to hear, yeah, there is brain drain from Blizzard. They do have a generally more negative perception now than ever. And if you look at Riot, well, Riot don't have a great rap. I mean, we all remember the Neum incident and, of course, the seemingly pretty damn rough frat house situation they had going on for a long time. But generally speaking, Riot do have a number of strengths. Number one, culture. Actually creating, responding to, and maintaining culture. If you have at all kept up, you know that is one of Riot's biggest strengths. I mean, just look at all the KDA stuff. They've turned League of Legends into, I guess, one of the most successful K-pop videos of its year. What's going on there? Clearly, right, Riot have their finger to the pulse. Riot are a company that are newer than Blizzard. They grew to maturity and scale very much in the modern era of the internet. Now, if you, like me, have played World of Warcraft, then you will know that for the last 5, 6, 7, whatever years, World of Warcraft has been just constantly saddled with problems. Now, it's great that Shadowlands is moving us away from that, but with Titan Forging, how they did loot, and a bunch of other things at the game, there have constantly been things that players have pointed out as humongous impending issues in the alphas and in the betas, and even just based on concepts after BlizzCons. The players have said these are going to be big problems, and lo and behold, Blizzard have always been surprised when things have blown up in their face. Blizzard are an old school company. They run old school. Internally, they are very, very old school, right? They've not kept up with the times. I think that fundamentally, Riot are more set up to be a competitive player in just about any space than Blizzard, purely because Riot, I think, is a more modern, more agile, more switched onto the community, and better at running a live game company than Blizzard is. Now, there's a bunch of other things too. Deploying massive things at scale. Riot are real industry leaders when it comes to server tech and stuff like that. We could go into a lot of details there, even some of the specific stuff they set up to get pretty incredible like server performance on Valorant. They're just really good at all of that stuff. So basically, if I think about them making an MMORPG, they are a more modern company in how they do almost everything. They are a lot better at being in touch with the active audience of a live game than Blizzard are, right? Blizzard are, I would say, rather notoriously prone to being out of touch. I would also say that while Blizzard is going to be experiencing brain drain, and we already know that Activision Blizzard, the overall unit, actually has a problem with developers. I'll cover that in a second. If you look at Riot, they're almost certainly more willing to spend. I mean, based on what we know of compensation, Riot do pay significantly better than Blizzard. And just look at the bonuses they handed out. It was like a 10% profit share for everyone, I think, this year. So they're more willing to spend on staff. They're institutionally better set up to operate in the modern era. And in terms of deploying massive, sort of multiplayer experiences, not massively multiplayer, but, multiplayer experiences at a large scale, they're very experienced. Now, if we look to an MMO specifically, their MMO project is being led by Ghostcrawler, it seems. Ghostcrawler, who was one of the most influential people on World of Warcraft for a period of time, that does include, I would say, a period of great design success in Mists of Pandaria. Yeah, Pandaria did bounce off a bunch of people, but I think there's a reason why it's very, very much well regarded when you look back on it. So it's being led by top MMO talent. And by the way, Riot have really slurped up a lot of Blizzard staff. They really have. I mean, it's been quite funny even in the, when Shadowlands comes out and people are able to show portfolios and stuff, just seeing, oh, right, yeah, that's their portfolio, but they're actually at Riot now. And just that's happened with a bunch of notable names from Blizzard. They end up at Riot, and of course other companies too, but it does show that Riot is somewhere where people are going to. So, Riot can do all of these things, and then there's one thing that WoW suffers from a lot. Jank, right? You can tell that World of Warcraft, while great technical feats have been performed to get it running the way that it does, and all of that stuff, it seems pretty clear that WoW does struggle with the age of its engine. Now, this is not a point to hammer at Blizzard. I've generally thought that doing a WoW 2 isn't the most sensible thing when you can just continually improve your engine and do all of that stuff. But there is absolutely something to be said for a company with the resources that Riot has being able to make a project like this and basically just go from the ground up with a new made-for-purpose engine. So, there's a lot of fundamental advantages here for Riot. I think this is a space where they can do well. And I think in terms of getting if it is an MMORPG, I mean, I've played Guild Wars 2 a bit, I've played ESO a bit, and man, it's just too floaty. The combat doesn't feel tight. And then you go to World of Warcraft, and I mean, when you're playing WoW and you're at low latency, as far as hotkey combat goes, they pretty much nail it. One of the only other companies I think could actually do that well is Riot Games. And then if you think about the art style, the lineage there, I think they can start to hit that too. And a lot of Blizzard people who do not know what's up with League will not get this, but I mean, if you go to their big Runeterra page, you zoom around their 3D map, you're like, wow, they've built a lot of lore here. They really have. They have their TV show coming out. They have Riot Forge with the single player experiences that are coming out to flesh out that world as well. Riot are on an absolute warpath. Now, it is true that Legends of Runeterra, their card game, and Valorant, they've been successful, but they've maybe not been the genre sort of defeating successes that maybe Riot would have liked, but they still have done quite well. But with an MMO, I think that, I think it's fair to say that there's a few ways where World of Warcraft could be a bit more disruptive than like CSGO. I at least think so. That's an intuition-based thing, and that's purely just because Blizzard have been the reigning king, and Blizzard have made non-stop mistakes for years and have never really been punished. They've never actually had, I would say, viable competition that competes with World of Warcraft sort of on the terms at which World of Warcraft plays the game of being a successful MMO product. I think Riot can go in there. There's another side of things too. Riot will not have to gouge things in terms of monetization. Like, if you look at Legends of Runeterra, it is infinitely more fair in terms of money than Hearthstone is. If you look at Valorant, it's also pretty damn reasonable. Now, I don't particularly like how things work with unlocking, heroes and stuff in League of Legends, but generally speaking, Riot's for the core gameplay are reasonable enough and free to play. I don't think they would make a free-to-play MMO that would have free-to-play MMO problems in the way that games like ArcAge have had those issues, or Black Desert Online, as an example. Now, I did tease Blizzard having staffing issues, right? Well, first up, if you look at the rumor mill, morale is not in a great place over there. But if you look at Activision Blizzard, the overall unit, one of the reasons why they got rid of Bungie, why they were okay with ending that deal, was because they would be able to free up studios like High Moon, because they literally did not have enough dev resources as an organization. Now, we did see the big job layoffs and all of that stuff go on. That was for non-development roles, and more recently you will have seen the headlines of them wanting to get 2,000 more dev roles. 2,000. That's a lot. And this is all in a context where I think just today, as I record this, we basically heard from Blizzard that there would be an update in Overwatch 2 soon, but to not expect to actually be playing the game anytime soon, which maybe is shooting a lot of hopes that it would have been a Q3 or Q4 2021 game. And that does show you a lot of issues. I mean, I do happen to know that basically what happened there was internal dev resources being split between multiple projects, including the StarCraft shooter that got cancelled. And that's what basically led to a whole host of problems with Overwatch, because, by the way, you see like all those skins and stuff, that's like outsourced. From what I understand, mostly outsourced. There's like reasons why the core dev team have really struggled there. So it's pretty clear that Blizzard, they struggle with quantity of content. They, and a part of that often is because they do have high quality standards and all of that stuff, and they want to have that Blizzard polish. But man, I just look at this whole situation and I think Riot has a better rap, I think, internally within the dev community of places that are good to work and like compensate their staff well. I think they'll be able to compete with Blizzard on talent. They have a whole bunch of fundamental strengths as an organization. Yeah, they could be viable competition. And I think, as somebody whose, vastly primary source of income comes from a World of Warcraft YouTube channel, right? I think this is good. Because I think that World of Warcraft somehow is resource starved. I mean, I don't want to get personal or anything like that, but they're resource starved. You look at what their class team is able to do, and you look at, if you know what's actually up there in terms of the amount of people who work in those things, you're just like, man, how did you ship this game still having so many problems? What? And then you sort of realize, well, they just don't have enough people working those things. It's really weird. Like, World of Warcraft, to me, seems like this humongous mismatch of amount of money the game brings in and that ratio to the amount of effective resources deployed on that game. Now, I said effective resources for a reason, because you can't just 10x the size of the team and have 10x the output. Very much, probably the opposite would happen. If you know anything about dev, like that, you don't linearly scale up your overall production capacity for a whole bunch of types of work by just adding more and more and more people to the problem. But fundamentally, I do think the WoW team is understaffed. I mean, look at the Call of Duty situation, right? Their other big franchise. They've got so many different studios working on a yearly Call of Duty, such that each studio has got a 2 or 3 year long dev cycle. And you look at World of Warcraft and you think, man, how do they make so little content? You look at the Battle for Azeroth expansion, you see the final patch of that, and you're like, cool, horrific visions were a nice feature, but that raid had a lot of asset reuse, and also there wasn't a new zone or anything. You just reused 2 other zones, and it wasn't that good. You just do think. So, I would maybe hope that this has Bobby Kotick and the boys, the people who are actually responsible for the deployment of resources in the company, to maybe wind their neck in and think, hang on a second, Riot Games is marching into the MMO space. Maybe we should actually start to treat World of Warcraft with the love that it deserves, with the actual resources that it deserves. Because absolutely, at least speaking from a player's perspective, I look at World of Warcraft and I think, how is this the most successful MMO in the world and it does not get like more dev resources, more stuff added? How does it constantly seem like this game is behind schedule and the team aren't able to make enough stuff? Now I get it, it's an MMO, people consume content real fast. But still, I think WoW could do a lot better there. And I would really hope that this is a slap across the face to the people who are allocating the resources, that they actually think, hang on, we need to protect this IP. We need to ensure that we are set up to be competitive. I think they really need to be more willing to launch long-term projects for that game, to understand World of Warcraft, we want it to be here for 10 years, so we can start a 3-4 year engineering project now. I mean, I don't want to backseat dev. I don't know what those things would be. The people in the team obviously will know better, but I think they should be getting more resources. And I also think, I mean, Blizzard should be more willing to increase pay and to be more competitive in the hiring process, because they obviously are falling behind. It's like pretty damn notorious how they're falling behind. Look, Activision keeps on having record years. Their stock is at an all-time high. Why? I mean, are they seriously just trying to be as financially efficient for every single quarter as much as they can? I mean, at the expense of long term? Is that literally what's going on here? And then we're going to be in a situation where like a fully Tencent owned, I guess with Riot, private company, I mean, where they, you know, where just Riot's ability to say, nah, actually, we're not going to focus only on the next quarter, and we're going to go really, really damn big and work on massive long-term projects. Maybe Riot's ability to do that will start to actually, like, legit compete. I mean, look, League of Legends is already, like, one of the biggest games in the world, so, man, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. There's not that much more to say. This is a type of a thing that is by nature purely driven on my own personal speculations and, you know, vibes and sort of understanding whisperings that I hear in the scene. But I still think that it's an important thing to talk about. Yeah, so look, more competition. Competition is good. Blizz, it's time to up that game. Activision decision makers, stop being stingy with Blizzard, please. They might actually need more resources to compete. All right, next up, let's talk a bit about Nathria, because Race to World First is going on. I've not been following it super closely because I've actually just been playing the game, oddly enough. But I'll tell you what has been pretty cool. I mean, last time I looked, there was 3 guilds, 7 out of 10, 2 guilds, 6 out of 10. Wow. I mean, that's a great state for the competition to be in. It's not a 2-horse race. I think that is really cool. So, nice stuff there for the competitive people. The other thing that went on, though, is it turned out normal and hard were way more hard than they tend to be, right? Or normal and heroic, even. My team noticed that. I mean, our guild fully expected to go in there and just wipe the whole place out. On normal, of course. We're only starting heroic in January because that's basically the type of guild we are. We do not want to ask people to start raiding in their holidays. I mean, we're 8 out of 10 right now. We've had an absolute blast. I'll talk about my opinions soon. But the difficulty, it caught a lot of people by surprise. Now, there have been nerfs. I think overall it still is a bit harder. It still is a situation where if you do not understand mechanics in normal mode, you will die. It used to be, if you would have asked me, hey, do you want to go do a normal mode or do an LFR? I would do a normal mode any day of the week, because LFR is an absolute fiesta. Clown fiesta, to be specific. But normal, you can go in there and actually, you know, even if half your guild are really, really sloppy, still wipe it out. Not the case. Not the case. We have found times where, you know, 1 or 2 of our like newer players, stuff like that, where that, like, yeah, legit did block progress until we could sort of get people up to stuff, which, you know, it's actually a good thing, because it means those people have learned and have been able to see they're becoming better and better players over time, and that's really good. So I think this is how WoW difficulty should be in these raids. And I'll tell you what, a bit more difficulty and a bit more, well, a bit less loot, and I think you're actually setting WoW up to be a way, way more just long-term healthy game where, you know, it's a bit slower, it's a bit more considered. It's no longer gotta go fast, re-clear, Titanforge, Titanforge. No, it's just like, hey man, I've got my bis. Gonna go get my bis. And it's going to be a bit harder, but it's going to be super rewarding. Bam, you've just hit gold. Because I'm so much more engaged in this raid right now. I mean, whenever we killed N'Zoth, and I might actually have the footage, but we killed N'Zoth and got Curve, and the guild reaction was, oh, good, glad that's done. I can now stop. But with this, we're all hyped. We're doing Mythic Pluses after raid and destroying our sleep schedules. Maybe that's our problem, but overall to me, it's just a good sign for the health of the game. And as much as that section there about, hey, Riot Games could be spooky for you, Blizz, better get thinking about the future. I know as much as that did seem like a big section of being a big old Blizzard doomer, well, look, legit, Blizzard do have their issues. That's absolutely the case. But even though I did say that, like, I'm having such a great time in the game right now. And even, yeah, in the raid stuff. And in PvP. And everything else. This is great. Okay, let's finish it off with some quickfire. Diablo Immortal, testing has begun. We now know a bit more of the business model, and it very much looks like one where you'll be paying for faster progression, but with gear still having to come from playing the game. Also, I mean, it's got a market thing, but not one you can cash out of, and they were very quick to say that it's not like the real money auction house from D3. Look, tell you what, it's probably going to be a pretty decent mobile ARPG, though, I mean, we all know this is a game that's really intended for the Chinese market, who I think in the past have really turned out and put money into mobile ARPGs. So, there's that going on. Eartheye Basin. You probably noticed that you didn't have to wait for towers before you could go and kill Drakthar. So, yes, they are fixing things, so the mob scaling will mean that no, you will not be able to rush the final boss with 4 towers still up and make, I guess, the epic battleground become a PvE rush. How bizarre. Also, some Mythic Plus loot changes have happened. They've essentially just smoothed out the item level curve for the rewards. There could be some, some frustrations there, but I think if you actually look at the overall table, I think, yes, it does make sense. And I think it also makes sense for this to be the end of the WoW news. So, yeah, that's the end of the WoW news. If you would like to get some pretty damn sweet loot, you can check out the Patreon. Get your Death Knight pin, get some nice art for your walls, and the sticker. And also, it's the last of the year, and does mark the last of the current style that we're doing. We are, look, we're still, similarly chunky format. There's still going to be a pin in the new year, don't worry. But we're changing up some of the art style and doing a refresh, a re-spruce. It's going to be really fun. So, that's what's up. Thank you for watching, and with that said, I'll see you next time.